So, MaNa, thanks for coming on. Hello, everybody. It's the Pig Show, and we are here with episode number 6. There's been a bit of a hiatus as I've been on holiday on and off for a few trips throughout January, spending time with Dot and kind of enjoying the non-StarCraft life. And I'm back with a stronger passion than ever. And what's helping me with that passion is
enjoying non-StarCraft life.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Shame.
That's something I want to ask you about a bit as well, because you've basically been playing StarCraft nonstop for 15, 16, 7. You're playing Brood War when you're like 8 years old, right, MaNa?
Yes, yeah. I've been playing Brood War since the very beginning. I even had like a software version, the demo version of StarCraft, not Brood War, just StarCraft original. And I remember when there was like a Terran campaign and you were facing a Zerg. And I was wondering, how come my buildings are taking any kind of damage? Because the Hydralisk animation, like you couldn't see a missile or anything. Like I was wondering how the Hydralisk are making any kind of damage. And I was really, really confused. I mean, I was like, 7 or 6 years old when that happened. So I was not that bright.
Growing up with RTS seems to be a bit of a pattern. As I said, the last person we had on was obviously your teammate Dario, who grew up with like 3 brothers playing video games his entire childhood. I know you and is it just your older brother? Because I know your older brother was a pro gamer as well back in the day. Do you have any other siblings? Did you guys all game? Yes. Or was it just the two of you?
I have 2 older brothers. One 6 years old is the one that you don't know, and 2 years older, Funkai or Aster. He was a pro gamer. Well, I wouldn't say a pro gamer, but he was playing on a high level. He never took it super seriously to have it like a full-time thing. He was like at a university or at a school or something. Like he never took it 100%. So yeah. I mean, he was playing for Fnatic as one of the first members of the StarCraft 2 roster when beta came out. So he was quite good.
Damn. I mean, that's it's no small feat, right? But there's that big leap of actually going full time, which, especially back in the day, I think it's probably a little bit easier for kids these days. But I was actually just yesterday and today looking up old interviews with young MaNa. I was looking at you when you were like 17, 18 years old, talking like Caldor and stuff and Richard Lewis. And when you're a little bit older, just after you'd won DreamHack, your first big championship. And it was kind of cool to remind myself. I always like to do this and go back and go, wait a second, we've all kind of known each other and seen each other at so many events, and sometimes I forget how long it's been and how young and childish and just kind of different we all were and how much we've developed as people. So in one of these interviews, you were talking about going full time, and you were talking about how your parents were super supportive. Your dad was always driving you to the airport for events and this sort of stuff, but it was still a hard decision where, previously you'd kind of been putting it off for school. So how old were you when you made that jump into full time, and kind of, was it right when you finished high school and then you just chose not to go to university, or did you actually drop out of school as well?
Yeah, that's when I finished high school. That was 2012. I finished the high school with pretty good numbers, with good score. I suppose, like not very good, but good enough. And yeah, that's when I had to make a decision. Do I go to university and try to play StarCraft at the same time, which would consider a lot of time and a lot of effort to combine both, or do I go full time? And considering my all achievements and how good things were going and how quickly esports was developing and how much money I was actually making, there was no point for me to go to university after calculating everything, especially just finances, I suppose. So it was just the right decision to do at that time. It was 2012. I was 18 years old, I believe. That's 19 if it would be December, but I finished school in what was it? In June, and then my birthday is on December, so I was basically 18 at that time.
I guess it was not too difficult then at that point, right? Because you're getting that success, it's kind of naturally flowing in, but not to, I think, kind of undervalue the importance of that decision, because it is scary, right? And I'm sure leading up to it, before the kind of boom in StarCraft 2's popularity, you were playing a lot of RTS games growing up, and it was actually probably that years of experience that led to you being good enough to actually get these results, right? So if we can rewind just a little bit, when did you first play a tournament of any RTS game, or like, was it online or like a clan match or anything like that?
the first they're definitely clan matches. That would be like a tournament thing. To give you an exact date, that would be probably when I got the first internet in my home, but that had to be like 2004, 2005, maybe 2003. I don't even remember when I got internet at my home, because back in the day you couldn't, like, it was not very accessible, especially in Poland. Like we had the modem that you could use and pay for it. And you could not like pick up the phone, like the very old modem internet, and we didn't use that for StarCraft. So when we first got like a stable connection for StarCraft, that was actually a big move forward, a step forward. Because we could finally connect to Battle.net, and we always wanted to connect to Battle.net in StarCraft.
You would have been about probably 11 years old, somewhere in that range at that point.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 9 years old. I remember going to internet cafes, not just to play StarCraft, but when I was, it was very popular to just go to the internet cafe and just chat, with people all around the world or all around Poland.
Oh,
and
cool.
I remember talking to a girl in the chat, and, and like the conversation is going well, and she's like, okay, so how old are you? I'm like, 9. She's like, 19? I'm like, no, 9. I guess she was very sad because the conversation cut off after that.
There was no robe and wizard hat put on after that point in the conversation, man. Did you play a lot of like Counter-Strike, Dota, the sort of stuff as well back in the PC cafe days?
Not Dota, no. I played Counter-Strike. I actually played Half-Life even with my father on Sundays. We played Age of Empires, we played Red Alert, we played Command and Conquer, Tiberian Sun. That's a little bit later. We played Age of Empires 1, Age of Empires 2 was not that popular. My father really liked Age of Empires 1. He would always just like camp behind the towers, and one catapult would wreck him. He wasn't very good. I played Quake 1 and 2. 2 was more suitable for LAN, and that was the very first game we played on LAN between computers in our home. So we played a lot of Quake, but StarCraft was the game that's stuck with us for the most of time. I played Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3 a little bit, but that was already the time of StarCraft.
Yeah.
Pretty much all the RTSs that were coming out at the time, Dune, pretty much all the RTSs that like it was a very popular genre at that time, and I pretty much played them all. But StarCraft like just stuck with me the most. I don't know if it was the graphics or if like I really don't know why I stuck with StarCraft. Why did I like it? It's crazy that I've been playing this game for such a long time and it's never got boring.
Did you ever play competitively at Warcraft 3?
No. I was already competitive in StarCraft at that time.
Yeah.
I played maybe 200 or 300 games in Warcraft 3. I even, in StarCraft Brood War times, it was popular to do like a multi-gaming clan. Like everybody was creating teams and stuff like that. So I even made my own team in StarCraft Brood War. And then I played a little bit of Warcraft 3 just to make sure that I have a multi-gaming clan in Warcraft 3 and StarCraft Brood War. So that was the reason that I started playing Warcraft 3, and I created a team, and well, it didn't last for a long time, but it was fun.
Well, it's the classic thing, man. Back in those days, it was like to be a true owner, you got to own it all games, not just one, right? It was like they'd be like, all right, you can beat me at StarCraft. Can you beat me at CS? Like I'm better at clicking heads than you. Like there was this funny kind of revolution because the internet accessibility had hit a new level. It's funny because sometimes I'm like, yeah, this was the beginning of like esports and online gaming. There's always like one kind of older guy who was really into tech who was like, no, in 1993 we were playing Doom against each other, and I'm like, oh, okay, like that's like another level of like elite small community
right there.
Yeah, there was such a small community because so few people had access to the internet. But this is kind of when it first became mass available, right? And we all kind of started being able to play games online and then be these big groups. So StarCraft, you just kind of clicked with from the start. I always, it's funny because I played a lot of Warcraft, and it wasn't really till StarCraft 2 where I got actually properly exposed to multiplayer StarCraft in a big way. And for me, it was watching Brood War for the first time and it was right before StarCraft 2 came out. And I got to watch some of the Korean matches with their crazy commentary with subtitles. They had on the Korean Airlines. They had all like these best Golden Mouse winning and OSL winning, like just a single game, not even a whole series. They'd show you one game. So there'd always be the most intense, crazy games and crazy commentary. And I'd obviously played a ton of Brood War, and I played a few like, LAN customs against my brother or a couple random kids at the internet cafe. And there was something I remember that first time watching Brood War. And I was like, oh shit. Like, you know how it is with Brood War. You can see the armies moving across the map, and you can see like this base is like contested, but they're expanding in the other corner, and there's drops hitting, and just the crazy multitasking of StarCraft and the sheer amount of action that's going on, where I always felt there was like a physical push and pull that you can feel between the players, and you can really feel it. And I love Warcraft 3, and I love to watch like Todd and Grubby and stuff play, but it doesn't quite have the same kind of sheer number of actions you can focus on, right? It's like these intense micro battles, and there's a bit of multitasking and things going on in multiple areas. But in StarCraft, I feel like you can be focusing on like 7 different things at once, right? You can be expanding in 3 places so rapidly. Like you can push so many different strategic edges that I feel like there's just this physical nature to it. That's how I see it. I mean, do you think there is something to just like the macro element that you can focus on so much stuff? I see you as a very micro-oriented player. What do you think it is about StarCraft specifically that you love so much?
I think everything, that you can make units and that you can control them to the best of the possibilities. Like in a hand of a random player, the same set of units is not going to be as effective as in a pro gamer's hands. I think this is the biggest thing that I like about StarCraft, but also just the complexity and how you can basically have a conversation with your opponent, but not in wars, but in a game, how you interact with each other. And you have a different conversation with different pro gamers on the ladder each day. I think the complexity of the game and how many things can happen wrong and how perfect you need to be in order to defend or how you need to execute an attack. I think it's just beautiful how the game has been made in like 1993. No, wait, it is 1998 of StarCraft, and then it did translate to StarCraft 2. I think that's the beauty of the game.
Yeah, the fact that they stumbled upon it as well is so funny. They're like, wait, there's people playing these giant tournaments in Korea. What? They're like, yeah. Like what? We didn't realize this would be that good competitively or anything. Like, we liked playing against each other in the office a little bit, but like, whoa, this is actually like a really well balanced game where there is so many ways to kind of leverage your skill and stuff. And I gotta say, it's hard to translate that to a new game, right? And I think StarCraft 2 actually did do a really awesome job with it.
Yeah, I can't really imagine a game that would possibly compete with StarCraft and StarCraft 2 when it comes to like RTS genre. Like what something different would have to be done to like overcome StarCraft. What is there? What else is there that could make the game more difficult but also accessible to play? And it's crazy that StarCraft can survive for such a long time and still be like as popular as it is now, as like people say, oh, that game and stuff like that, but it's still super popular and still the very top of RTS genre. And also back in the day when I did not have an internet yet, I had a friend with my brother that brought Korean VODs from the Korean Pro League on a CD, and we watched VODs on CD. And that was the first time I was introduced to like esports side of StarCraft and like professional matches with like cameras. Like we had no idea it's that popular. And I remember I think one of the first 2 players that I recognized in a VOD was Nalra and Red Nada, and like the TVP between those guys was such a treat. And you would like get so hyped watching these VODs, like, oh, I want to play, like I have StarCraft as well. And I would just jump into the to play LAN with my brother against like 6 computers, and I'm like, yeah, we're pro gamers now. We were so excited to play StarCraft, and we were so proud of our matches that sometimes we would just save replays of us beating computers. Like it's so pathetic now looking at it back, but we were so proud of our skill level,
That is hilarious. That's so funny. This just gave me like a flashback to Company of Heroes. And I remember being a very, very average to bad Company of Heroes player. but I would like just rewatch the replays and I'd like take screenshots of like artillery landing on my enemies, like soldiers and stuff. I'd be like, yeah, this was so sick when I like gunned down these guys or something. And I had like this little folder of screenshots that I had as my screensaver. I would just rotate through these images of me blowing up soldiers and shit, and it's
That's
just
how you
so
get
funny.
motivated, right? Like
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Like you're proud of your accomplishments. Like I remember even in Brood War, in the early patches, or maybe just the Starcraft original, there were no replays. Like the replays were just added later on. How crazy is that? And how could pro gamers just play at that time when they cannot really rewatch the game? And I think that was the biggest revolutionary of StarCraft when the replays were introduced, because you could actually see the game that you have played and try to improve your play. You could actually see what your opponent is doing other than what you can see in game. It's crazy to think that the replays were actually not a thing back in the day.
That's actually insane. I mean, isn't it like League of Legends that still doesn't have replays? Is that, or did they?
No, I think you have replays right now. I even played League of Legends today. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, because the thing is, that's something they would have added in like the last year or two. I'm pretty sure, like the last couple of years, because that game came out before StarCraft 2, and for like 8 years it did not have any replays. So there was like
how crazy is that?
they were like recording everything. Like all the coaches just had to record so much stuff manually themselves, and I was like, whoa, this is actually crazy. Like. The old days, man, you couldn't get into replays and stuff. It was much harder to learn back then. The game in general was more of an enigma, right? Forums were more of a resource, right? When were coming up, and even in early StarCraft 2, that culture was still there. I remember learning RTS and learning StarCraft 2 and being like, oh my god, here's this article on Team Liquid from Sheth. And he's written a 27-page essay on like the graphs with the amount of worker efficiency you get, and like trying to calculate in numbers like what a safe worker lead is for Zerg versus the other races, and like how much income it translates to. And then if you're 8 workers ahead, okay, you're getting this much more money. How long do you need to kind of survive defensively before you should have more army than them off of that worker advantage? And I was blown away. I remember when this is 2010, and obviously you were getting into this back in the early and mid 2000s. Do you remember just like pouring through forums, hanging out in like clan channels and discussing this stuff, like arguing with other nerds about how ghosts are actually the best unit in Brood War or some other silly shit like this?
I remember first time discovering, I don't know if you remember a player from Germany, Mondragon. He was a StarCraft Brood War. Yeah. So he's like, for people that are unaware, Mondragon was a very, very good player from Germany, played Zerg. And he was representing Germany in WCG multiple times, or even took like very high placings in the tournaments. And that was a very tough thing to do. So I just knew that this guy existed. And then I have no idea how, but we discovered a clan channel of his team. It was TOT, Templars of Twilight, I believe that was the clan name. And I didn't even know that like a channel like that exists. And we go into this channel and I see Mondragon there. I'm like, oh my god, I'm on the same chat channel as Mondragon. I took a freaking screenshot of that and I saved it. I was so proud of it that I was in the same channel. Fast forward actually 5 or 6 years, I remember just playing against him in like a WCG qualifier or whatever, just some important tournament qualifier. And I remember just recalling that moment. I took a screenshot of a guy that I'm in the same channel, and now I'm just competing against him. Of course, he crushed me, but it was still a fun experience to be in the same game as the guy.
Dude, that's so sick. It's the moment where the cool kids finally invite you to their table. You get to sit down with them at lunch, you know?
Yeah, you had to sit down at the channel. Like, if you wanted to join a good team, I remember micro gamers, actually Kaoru, who used to work for Gaming.
Acer. He ran Acer and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And he was in the team of micro gamers in StarCraft Brood War. And I remember just hanging out on the channel for like half a year, just first months, just being silent, just being there at the channel, and then just trying to observe the games or just try to say hi. And then I remember after 6 years, I was like, hey, do you want to join the team? You've been like playing the guys and you had good results against them. Do you want to join the team? I'm like, fuck yeah, I do. I remember being so happy to just get invited into the team that I was just sitting on the channel for such a long time, it felt like a big accomplishment because the team was very good at that time, and that was the the moment of invite. I remember just being so happy.
Well, people are spoiled these days. You know, back then you had to work to find knowledge, right? It wasn't handed to you, even though forums were getting bigger. If you wanted to get better at PvT or whatever the matchup was or anything, you needed to often try and hunt down these chat channels. You needed to like, you know, harass people like, what did I do wrong in this game and stuff,
Yes.
right? I remember even if you were an average player on the ladder, you would sometimes get like followers, right? There'd be some guy who's a bit lower than you who would kind of want to follow you to the chat channel, who's be asking you for advice. You'd be asking the Mondragons for advice, and there'd be this like, everyone was trying to kind of find how you solve these games, which were so complicated games back then as well. I mean, you look at Brood War and like the number of minute details due to like just the kind of, I guess you could call it bugginess of the game, right? It's just the way old games were designed. There's all these weird things where it's like, you know, anyone who wants to know about this, go look up, you know, how to wall off in PvZ in Brood War. And like all the rules were like, well, if it's below or above the forge, or if it's on this corner, it's different and a lane can get through. If it's like this, it can't. And I'm like looking at this as like someone is like, oh, I thought StarCraft 2 had like deep, crazy things I have to memorize. But like, you know, games back then were a whole new level. So you had to really study that shit to figure it out. And it just created an interesting culture. There was a lot of like street cred, right? It was a lot like kind of going down to your local basketball court. And it's like, oh, that guy there, he's the guy. He kicks everyone's ass. And there was so much, I think, you know, you weren't fighting for money. This wasn't our jobs back then. You know, you were just fighting for, I want to kick people's ass and I love this game.
Yeah, you just wanted to be better than others.
Exactly, man. So at some point, obviously, you went into pro play and started kind of getting into shit. Did you play many tournaments towards the end of Brood War? Were you playing like Polish, like Nation Wars for Poland and that sort of stuff? Like how good did you get at Brood War?
So in Brood War, I think the number one obviously was Korea. Very close, I suppose. Well, maybe not very close, but like second was China, and very close after China was Poland. And we had very good, successful players and very talented people who did well in tournaments. And Polish representation, the nation was very, very strong in all the nation wars. And sometimes you would even just set up like a Polish team versus Korean clans matches and so on. So it was very tough to be in Polish national team. And I was there pretty much once I got to the level of like competing at a high level. I was in the team pretty much forever, and I never was like kicked out because you would. The system that there was like you could challenge a pole team member, and you had to defend your spot. And I always defended my spot whenever someone challenged me. And when it comes to like the end of Brood War 2009, 2010, I was one of the best foreigners in Brood War. I was very close to going to Korea actually for like Idra was going for. I believe Astro or something like that.
Yeah.
There was like a tournament organized to find a foreigner that you could send to Korea to play in the Korean team. I lost to the winner of that tournament, Noni Tyler. He was playing Brood War, StarCraft 2 as well, and I would say it was pretty good. One of the best foreigners, but obviously StarCraft 2 came out. There was not too many StarCraft Brood War tournaments, and like obviously I can say one of the best. It doesn't mean that I was top 3, but I could have been top 10 or top 15. It's really hard to judge with how little tournaments there were. But I was very confident in my skills, and I was just learning very very quickly. And with StarCraft 2, when beta came out, and when I had to play the WCG qualifiers for offline finals, I remember just being so much better at Brood War because of StarCraft 2 and how like fresh things looked for me in Brood War, and how quickly I could move my units around because of StarCraft 2. Like it was a crazy experience to switch between the games, but it also made me so much better.
That's so cool, isn't it? There's something where a lot of players have a problem where they get too tense when they're playing StarCraft, right? It's a constant battle of you're trying to play fast, you're trying to, you know, get on top of your opponent, but at the same time, we always see players who burn out and try to grind too hard, too constantly, Sometimes having a breath of fresh air, whether it be another game or just a little bit of a break where you take the pressure off your shoulders. You know, I always talk about how we see Terran players who retire and then win, like have the best tournament performances, getting to finals or winning like 6 months or a year later when they're like, I haven't practiced in forever. And suddenly the pressure's off and like they're winning shit. And I'm like, what the hell? Like there's something here. There's something about the way players need to be trying to, you know, create that freedom in their mind. I mean, a lot of people would say it might be the opposite though if you're playing Brood War in StarCraft 2 because the mechanics are so different. Did you find yourself getting jumbled at all because you couldn't multi-building select and use all that, or was it just like you found it kind of easy to just sink into one mode of macroing and another mode of doing it?
I think it was still so early that I didn't get used to the StarCraft 2 mechanics. It was just like you said, the breath of fresh air, seeing just another game, and I think that's what made it just easier for me to because as a player, something like you said, the Terran players or Berserk players, Protoss players, we sometimes get stuck in our mind and we like believe that something is not going to work or this is the right way to play. And if you don't play for a short amount of time or you just explore other things, you might find another way of playing. And that's pretty much what happened then. StarCraft 2 just opened my eyes of like much more opportunity to that harassment is like maybe the way to go. Maybe I can just defend a little bit better while harassing, which I haven't done before, for example. It was just some of the ideas of StarCraft 2 gameplay that excelled in the short period of Brood War dominance for me.
That's always so cool to see when you can readjust and adapt your strategies. I think there's so many times where it's such a small change, just some minute thing we never thought of doing differently, right? So much of StarCraft is you're playing one of the most complex systems ever. And I always think of it as, okay, so how can we handle it? There's so many decisions. There's so many things to micro and macro. And I see it as players, you're creating a system, right? You're saying, well, that's what a build order is. It's in this situation, I do this. In this situation, I do that. This is my standard build order. This is how I deviate versus this and that. But sometimes there's parts of that we just take for granted, right? We're like, oh, this is the solid way of doing it. And we just forget to revisit. Wait, is that actually the right way to do things? And sometimes we need that little bump to say, hey, wait a second. I need to go back down to the most minute level of like, why am I doing this? And is this the right way to do it? And sometimes when you revisit that, you realize your assumptions were wrong, right? There's very small things that can make massive differences. Sometimes there's big things that can make differences. I think this is a good segue. Struggling with strategies, getting stuck in certain mindsets. PvZ has always been a matchup which historically you struggled with. I would say, is it fair to say throughout all of StarCraft 2's history, maybe not as much in Heart of the Swarm?
I think even in Heart of the Swarm, because of like the Swarm host era, I think it's always been like that. Even in Brood War, it was my worst matchup, I think. I don't know why it is. I think it's just like the way that the matchup works, that you get overwhelmed with the units, and maybe in StarCraft 2, like if I really knew why it was, I would already fix it, right, or try to fix it. Like it's been my worst matchup for such a long time. I clearly have no idea why it truly is the worst. It's tough for me to say, but one of the things that you said, and I agree absolutely, is questioning why you are doing such a thing. And some people are just like copying build orders or just playing autopilot. And why am I doing thing? What am I trying to achieve is one of the biggest questions you can ask yourself while trying to improve. And this is something that I have learned very late in no, like I was playing, I was trying to get. Of course, I'm trying, but why am I doing such stuff? I was like more than trying to do stuff, try to understand why you are doing such things. It's very important.
Yeah, it's something where, I mean, I think of you as a player who thrives when you're interacting with your opponent. I personally think of you as a PvT specialist. I don't know if you agree. But I think you're someone where when you're able to interact with them and pressure and micro, you're able to dictate the pace, but you're also able to take momentum in a position where I don't think anyone else would sense that they've got a position where they can push harder and you're the guy who will push harder and kind of wedge open this timing that doesn't look like it exists. And I say this as someone who's casted quite a lot of your games and watched them, where I'm like, there's no opening here. There is an opening here. Oh my God, and you're very good at doing that. And definitely we think about, Zerg, right? Overwhelming nature as a race, right? They're swarming around. I guess sometimes it's like there's more, you can't hang around as long, right? Or you can't maintain that interaction as long without getting swarmed. Sometimes it's more like sharp timing attacks that are pre-planned minutes ahead, right? And especially I think in modern Legacy of the Void PvZ, the thing which a lot of fans bemoan about the matchup is actually the fact that, hey, wait, the fights are very sudden and one-sided that decide the game sometimes, right? There's harassment that leads into it, but there isn't as much as that protracted kind of back and forth micro and pressure. Do you think that's part of why, you're maybe not as comfortable in this matchup?
Oh, it might be the case. It also might be that Zergs can do the same stuff that I do to other people. Like you said, finding an opening. I think it's very easy for a Zerg to find an opening in like Protoss defense because of like the Banelink run by, Zergling run bys. Maybe I want to find an opening, but because I'm trying to find an opening, I'm opening myself, to potential counterattacks. Maybe that is the way that I am struggling in the matchup. I think it's really difficult for me to say what exactly it is. And while we're trying to find some reasons, it's such a long time that I've been struggling against them in the matchup with all different metas, all different map pools, all different patches. That sometimes it feels comfortable to play the matchup. For like sometimes I will feel fine in my PvZ, but I think the most important part why I'm struggling, not only in PvZ, but in like PvT and sometimes PvP, is that I do not have very well-refined build orders. I think that what I brought from Brood War, and it's still with me, is that I do not copy anybody. I don't do like notes of the build orders. I just do what I feel. And sometimes I have it figured out very well, and sometimes it works. But most of the time, I think, especially now, because the game is so old and it's so figured out, that you need to have like crisp timings of a build order that it makes it to the perfection. That's not something that I have. And I believe I'm also quite easily distracted when I am not the one commanding the game. I get lost very quickly, I think. And that's like when you can see I have a lot of supply blocks. Sometimes I do not have the perfect map control, or some of the units get slipped into the natural, unspotted, something like that. And these are the chinks in my armor. And like you said, sometimes I find an opening in my opponent, but it's also quite easy to find an opening in me, I think.
That's I think that's some really good self-awareness, and obviously that's something you develop when you've been competing as long as you. There's a lot of times where you have a hard loss, you got to reflect, and you're thinking about your strengths, your weaknesses as a player, right? I often talk about it when I'm casting your games, where I'm like, I repeat it all the time, and I've even had people tweet at me like, "Shut the hell up, Pig! Stop saying it." I'm like, never count mana out of a game. There are PvZ specifically, but in all matchups, I'm like, there are a lot of situations where I look at it and I go, this Protoss player is dead. But when you're in the game, I go, no. Like, mana, sometimes I look at your games and I go, man, you're kind of behind because your opponent just had this crazy good macro, like crisp, crazy build, and you're down a certain amount of supply, and I think, this is really rough. But when I'm watching your games, I never think there's any foregone conclusion, because you have this ability to power up as long as you've got like a prism in your opponent's face or something to micro. Like you sometimes become 7 times stronger against the Zerg when you're down 80 supply. Like, and you just start doing so much stuff. And I'm like, this is MaNa's superpower. This is what always impresses me when I'm watching your games, and it's what gives me a lot of excitement. And it's why you're able to make these very deep runs in tournaments over what is now 10 years of StarCraft 2 pro gaming. It's incredible, some of the comebacks you've made. You're the guy who, you could be down 35 supply, 2 base versus 2 base PvP, and I'm like, no, like, keep an eye on it. He's going to snipe the observer and get, like, win with the DTs. Like, he's going to go for it, because you do have that instinctive, like, let's roll with the punches thing. That's a strength that you develop the more you play by feel and the less you're following set strategies, right? You become better and better at adjusting to every situation you're in, right? As you said, though, a little bit of a weakness with maybe the build order. So is that something you've been addressing in the last year or two? You're trying to kind of go, okay, like let's keep the fluidity, the strength of you as a player, but let's also change it up a little bit and try to refine some openings a bit more. Like how do you address that as a player? Because you don't want to give up your strength. You don't want to abandon your strengths as a player.
Yeah, exactly. It's like asking Blind to play macro every game, right? It's not gonna happen. Like for me, I'm an aggressive player. I thrive in the chaos as well. I can find the openings in my opponent's armor, but it's also one of the weaknesses that I have. And like I want to fix this. I want to have like better builds, and I will have a couple of days or a couple of months where it's working well. But then, like, my opponents figure out the build order that I'm doing, and like, why do I even try? Like, I better stick to the game style that I currently have because that's been working the best. And I think the hardest part of StarCraft is trying to figure stuff out continuously, because once you have a build order and you feel strong about it, you will play it to the perfection, but then your opponents will find a counter to it, and you need to refigure out how to counter the counter, and so on and so on. It's a really difficult game to keep doing that. I would love to get better at that, but it feels like that this is how I play the game, and this is what I feel the most comfortable in. As you said, a lot of the times when I am behind, I do get better. I get fired up because I know I cannot screw up any more times. And one of the weaknesses that I have and that I really hate about myself is that I do get lazy when I'm ahead, because I'm like, I can take this lazy fight. I do not micro it to the perfection, or I don't need to place a pylon right there. I do not need to start this upgrade immediately. I can have spare 10 or 15 seconds because I am so far ahead. But when I'm behind, I know I cannot do that, because any mistake that I do, well, it's going to be game over, and in tournaments especially. And I see in Brood War even times I admired people who, when the game was finished, they would just click continue, and they would just macro up for the next 15 seconds just to make sure that if the game would not finish now, they would be ready for the next chapter of the game. And this is not something that I have developed as a habit. And sometimes I try to do it in my games, but it's simply not a habit for me. And I suppose being sometimes lazy while being in an advantage is one of my biggest weaknesses.
Yeah, that's something I do quite a lot. The macroing orders. I learned that from Nanawa back in the day. A very good player. Bit of a controversial personality, of course, but one of the most methodical players who's ever played StarCraft 2, right? Where everything was mapped out to perfection. And now,
it's very hardworking.
Yes, absolutely. And it's kind of funny, we're talking about you as a player here, and we like to just have some games in the background for the more, short attention span people who watch this show. I don't know if you have got the stream open at all, but we've been watching Zest vs TY from the Katowice qualifiers. And I think it's just interesting to have this in the background because Zest is the opposite of you as a player. I think in a lot of ways, where he repeats the same build orders over and over again, but it is like mapped out to the tiniest detail. And no matter what his opponent does, sometimes he just repeats it and repeats it and repeats it, right? I feel like he is very different to you as a player who kind of has his own way of playing. And every player cops criticism, right? Zest cops criticism because if the build's not working, sometimes he doesn't have a plan and floats 3,000 resources on the regular, which people go like, how can you do that? What? That's crazy. He also cops criticism for being too predictive. Like when it doesn't work, people, heap praise on his head when his timing attacks and his pre-planned builds work perfectly. And when they don't work, people go, oh, you're so predictable, it's silly. And this is the catch-22 of any style in StarCraft, right? There's always going to be fans on the sideline saying you're doing it wrong when it doesn't work and saying you're a genius when it does work. And it's sometimes hard to go, okay, let's find my own style. Let's keep that. You talked a little bit there as well about reinventing yourself as a player between tournaments and not being too predictable with your build orders. And this is one of the biggest challenges all players have faced. Part of why Flash has such a legacy in Brood War is there were so many players who he had a target on his back and they were just grinding sniper builds for him. And he had to change up his style or his builds, so regularly, as well as just be so goddamn solid that he could stop them, even when they were designed to take him out. And I think a lot of players have kind of adopted this in different ways. There are players who just go crazy high variance, different build orders. There's players who make tiny adjustments to their macro to be just a little bit safer or to scout a little bit better. It's something which is very difficult. And actually, it's brought up, like I said, I was watching some interviews with you before. There was one with Richard Lewis right after you'd won DreamHack, and he's like, what went wrong at this tournament? You just won DreamHack, but you just bombed out of Home Story. And, you know, a young 18-year-old MaNa was there going, well, I mean, I came straight from one tournament to another, and I used the exact same build orders every game because I didn't have time to get good at a new one. And, you know, well, surprise, surprise, they counted me. And you were very matter-of-fact and chilled about it. You were like, no, I didn't expect to do that well here. Like, I came straight from one tournament. So it's something that plagues all players, especially the more successful you are. Do you try to rotate the builds a little bit quicker these days? Do you try to just have a bigger playbook? Is there any rule of thumb when you go into a tournament where you go, I have 3 builds for this matchup, 3 builds for this matchup, 3 builds for this matchup, I'm good? Is there any checklist you go over before a tournament in the weeks leading up to it? Right now you're doing it for Katowice. Are you thinking of it in terms of having enough variety?
How much can I say about it?
Don't give away too many secrets. I don't want to. I was like, oh, can we look at some of your replays? Then I was like, wait, Katowice is in 2 weeks. Dude, we're not looking at any of your replays on stream. No, that would be very unfair.
What I can say is that I want to play what I'm comfortable with. Doesn't mean that I do not have something special planned in case I have to use something. If there's a situation that I need to use something tricky, something non-standard, I have it. If I feel comfortable with the way that I am playing, that I can play standard, I will play standard. But if you're my opponent and you want to guess which one it is, well, good luck to you, because I do it on random. So, like, if I do see an opportunity, sure, I will use something crazy. But like, I might just do it because I feel like it. I am not afraid to throw something special in the middle of the series, in the beginning of the series, at the end of the series. I've been in the scene for such a long time. I have so much experience in the tournaments that I am simply not afraid to play a different game in tournaments.
Yeah, you start to accept the fact that there's a lot of things outside of your control, right? And you know, a lot of newer players make the mistake of, no, I've got to do my best strategy, because if I do one that I'm not the best at and then it loses, I should have just used my best strategy. And it's like, no, not at all. That's not it. I mean, I remember one time doing a really just silly, weird time Bane bust against a Protoss player in a tournament. And he came up afterwards, he's like, man, like, whoa, what was that timing? Like, whoa, this was really weird. I've never seen this before, blah, blah, blah. And like, he clearly wanted to know the plan and how I'd practiced it. And I was like, oh, like, I saw your wall was a little bit weird, and like, I just had a sense that maybe this would work. So I just made some Lings and Banes and went for it. It might
work, right? It just in this moment. I think it was a very similar situation. I believe it was Home Story Cup on Winter's Gate, Raynor versus Zest, where Zest did like a weird ass wall with like 4 big buildings, but by that time he created a big wall, Raynor just mass linked him. And why he did that? Well, just because the wall was very weird, and he decided that it just might work in this very situation. And it also makes Raynor a very difficult player, because Cyril might not do this kind of thing because, well, yeah, he has something weird planned, but I'll just play my game. But Raynor will capitalize on the weirdness sometimes that you did not have mapped out totally.
I mean, that's it. It makes you scary as a player when you do that as well, because there's this moment that, like, wait, you didn't prepare this strategy. It wasn't well defined. You just sensed something and went for it. And the thing is, that's more complicated than people, whether they're new players or fans, understand. Because, oh yeah, you just, rolled the dice on that one. But it does take a certain amount of mental strength to do that, have it fail terribly, and to just go, that's cool. Like, I knew that was part of the dice roll, and to go into the next map very unaffected. Maintaining that, like, I understand that this is a gamble and I'm okay with it. And sometimes I will bomb out of tournaments taking chances that turned out to be the wrong chance. But so here's an interesting thing here, right? When you think about this, and this is something I want to elucidate for the people watching or the players who aren't as experienced, you can make the wrong gamble and lose the tournament, and it can be the right gamble. And what I mean by that, because that obviously is a sentence that makes no sense, is you choosing with the information you had in that moment to go for that, having the variety, having the danger that you're creating as a player by doing that, looking at the information you had and the opportunities, maybe it didn't work out because of some other thing that was outside of your control, but actually systematically kind of having the mental prowess to say, I am okay to take this chance so that I am not a predictable player. I think there's a good chance of this. Actually doing that can be the right call. And you, if you're confident enough and if you're mentally tough enough, you can say, that was the right call, even though it didn't work. I'm not going to get into that mindset of saying, you idiot, you should have just done the other thing. Just because it didn't work. One game does not decide whether or not that was the right choice kind of systematically in how you approach a series or a tournament, right? So that kind of leads us into this idea of maintaining your confidence, choosing your build, staying calm, and also handling losses, because sometimes they're really friggin' silly. Sometimes they're a lot more painful if you just perform very badly and you're supply blocked and you're misclicking and you're mismicroing. Those, I think, are the much harder ones to handle. I mean, for you, how do you help center yourself in these scenarios? Do you just say it's just a gamble, it's fine? What are the losses that have hurt you the most? Is there a particular loss where you've been like, God, and it just really forced you to just rethink your approach to StarCraft, put you into a bit of a funk, a bit of a depression? What are some of the challenges you've faced with handling losses is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think the biggest loss for me is that I, like, every time that I lost a tournament would be like, yeah, it happened, and I move on. So, like, obviously I would like try to analyze it, but the most difficult loss would be 2015 WCS Finals versus Lilbo, where I lost 4-1. I had a very sick tournament run. From the very beginning of qualifying to the tournament, I was down 2-0, then I won 3-2, and so on to the very grand finals. And in the grand finals against Lilbo, I believe in both of our, like, if you would ask Lilbo at that time and ask me at that time, I was a slight favorite player in that matchup, 55-45, something like that. And the games that we have played, the situations that were there, I would win like 9 out of 10 times. It was playing, if I was like playing ladder or anything, or if I would replay that in the tournament. And I have lost these situations 3 out of 5 times in that final. And that was the loss that hurt me the most, because when I lost this, I knew I was in a very good position to win in one of the games, in another one of the games. And it like, to throw away so many good opportunities, that just hurt me a lot. And obviously I had situations like that before, but because this tournament was in Poland and I had such a sick run, and the situations that I was put in were actually really, really good, that's why it hurt me the most. But to also answer your questions about the losses, how do I like fix them? Like, how do I approach it? Recently, like maybe in the past year, I have had so much on my mind other than StarCraft that the losses that I have had hurt me a little bit more than before, and I was not handling them as well, because I had to win this game. I had to win this tournament because it matters more than before. Right now, there's not like, oh, there's another tournament in 2 days. There's not another tournament in a week. The importance of the games is a little bit more than it used to. But in the past month or month and a half, I was trying to get better at it again, try to fix my mentality, because in the long past, I think I had a very good mentality. I was more known as a very positive player, not whining. If there's a loss, then well, there will be another win soon, I suppose. But yeah, in the couple of years back, my mentality started to go back, in a wrong direction. I'm very not proud of it. Like, I started to no GG to my opponents, where I would always GG. And I know some people say, no, GG is not a big deal, especially among the pro gamers. But for myself, it is a handshake, and I would never disrespect my opponent in a tournament by not shaking his hand. But not GGing is basically like that for me.
Yeah.
And I'm not really proud of it. I'm trying to fix it, and I try to apologize to the people that I do not GG to afterwards, because when I look at it in a few hours or in a few days, I'm like, I'm such a dumbass. I shouldn't have done that. I feel sorry to the people that I did it to. Even though I caused them no harm whatsoever. All they did maybe was he no GG, what a loser, and that's it. I maybe made them laugh or something, but I just feel sorry about that. And the losses that I do take now, I try to, especially it's such a silly thing to say, but maybe it's not so silly if I say it now. It's because StarCraft has been announced for the next 3 years. a loss in a tournament now will not hurt that much because you know there's more. Maybe if you keep that kind of mentality, there's another chance. Like, don't beat yourself too much. You have time. You can work harder next time. Like, make sure you are proud of yourself. Maybe that way would be the best way to approach it.
It's tough to maintain the same level of intensity for any athlete, anyone competing at anything over such a long career, right? There's always these cycles where we fall into like bad mindsets and stuff. And I'm kind of the same with the GG. For some people, they're like, no, I just don't care about it. For them, it doesn't mean as much, right? But if you're a player who normally GGs pretty much every game, it comes to mean something, right? As you said, it's a handshake. So it's not so much about harming your opponent. For me, at least when I do it, it's more about the fact that it's the kind of toxic anger that's kind of welling up inside me, right? That's leading to it.
There's no good in it.
Exactly. It's that for me specifically, the way I think of it is it's me being unable to face up to the loss, right? Because if I can fully just accept, focus on, and understand the details of it, I can shake their hand and I can move to the next step of improving and continuing that, which is a never-ending thing, right? There's no end goal of like, sweet, I hit X level, now I'm there, I don't need to work. Like, it's a non-stop process, right? It never stops. But it's something where you kind of need to be able to maintain both intense focus, but also a sort of, equanimity, an ability to just kind of say, I can stay calm in the midst of these losses, but I also need to put in 110% effort. And that's the classic dichotomy in any StarCraft competition that I find, where you're trying to play at such a high level and put so much of yourself into the game, but you're also trying to stay detached enough that you're not getting crazy upset over losses and tearing yourself apart. It's so that you're staying calm enough in the midst of shitty situations to take that next step to improving. And it's really goddamn difficult. So, you said, okay, you're just trying to get back in the good mindset, trying to handshake. Let's talk real details. I'd like to break this down. Like, okay, you've just lost a map to a Ling Flood on ladder. Firecake has returned to the ladder. It's Firecake. He's Ling Flooded you. One of your favorite opponents who, you share some of your greatest 4-hour memories of StarCraft with. So, it's frustrating. You're already struggling with PvP that day. What?
Yeah. It's hatred. Let's go.
Let's add to it. This is a tournament losing game and an EPT Weekly Cup as well. Let's say it's eliminated you from the tournament. What do you try to self-talk? How do you speak to yourself there to try to get your head in the right space? Because I'm imagining there's immediately fuck, very angry thoughts welling up in your head. Is there a technique, or maybe we can come up with a technique right now of what you start trying to tell yourself, what you try to focus on?
Did I lose the game and am I out of the tournament now?
Yeah.
Okay, so was it a best of 3?
Yeah.
Was it a 2-0?
It was a 2-0. You lost 0-2, yeah.
God damn it, I'm so bad. I think it depends how I lost the game. You say it's a Link Flood, but is it because I didn't see it? Is it because I was trying to like the re-wall, but like one Link flooded in like half a second before building a building? I think it also matters how you have lost this game. Was it directly?
What's the more frustrating one for you? Let's play out that scenario.
Half a second from the gateway, I think. Like if you want to fully wall, you have your units. Half a second from a shade or whatever that the links flood in. I think, if you get angry, try to be aware that you are angry right now, and like ask yourself, why are you angry? What good is it going to do to you if you're angry right now? Are like the emotions that you have right now are good? Sure, like the game creates emotions and it's good for you, but try to make it what's the English word for that? Productive. Make it productive, that you can make use of it. So if you're angry right now, don't beat yourself up. Like try. I think one of the best things that I have learned in the tournaments and when you are angry, and that have worked for me as well, just breathe. Like literally, just close your eyes for the 30 seconds, for 1 minute. Just breathe in and out for a solid minute, and try to calm yourself down. There is no good in being toxic and in the emotions that you can you feel right now. there will be a lot of evil that wants to come out of you because you want to get that frustration out of the way. But because this has happened to me so many times, I know that I will regret my actions that I do during the anger. So just try to be aware that you are angry and it's no good. Basically, to make it simple.
I really like what you're saying there. So I have a very similar kind of thought process behind it, where obviously, you know, I think don't, you know, so often people say, how do I stop getting angry? And if you're just answering a Twitch chat question, I might say something like, okay, you know, don't let your ego get in control. Remember, it's just a game. You know, it's not your value as a human. You know, don't let it get out of control. Maybe take a short break if you need. But this doesn't really get to the heart of the issue. So what I find is a lot of players, some competitive players, and especially younger, newer players who haven't lost a billion tournaments and don't have this experience. So they think, okay, so I need to just not get angry about it. I need to, okay. And what they do is they try to ignore or push away the feeling of the defeat, right? They try to lock it in a box and put it to the side. This is some people, not everybody. I know I used to do this. And you're missing out on channeling your best resource as a player, which is your anger, right? Being a competitive person basically means you get angry because you care a lot about the thing. And that is the best fuel you can have as a player. You know, harnessing it is another story. You know, as you said, directed towards something productive. You're talking about let yourself feel, breathe, accept like kind of the loss that's happened, feel the pain of it. You fuck some shit up, that's fine, but use that anger and funnel it into the channels, right? You've built these habits for, okay, now let's use that to fix that problem or to fucking really do this strategy or this execution really well in the next game, in the next tournament.
Yeah, onwards, I mean, remember this anger so it doesn't happen to you again. Like, try to fix the same mistake that you maybe have done already 5 to 6 times, but this time it happened during the tournament. Like, use that anger to fix the mistakes so it doesn't happen again.
Exactly, because you can hang on to that anger and let it just stew in you, and it can be a destructive force. But it's just as useful if you can harness that and use that to fuel, you know, like you said, I never want this to happen again. How many times have we heard pro gamers say those words like, oh man, I was so angry, I was so upset at losing this thing. Like, so I just decided I never want to lose to that again. And it's a big motivating force, and it's a big thing that gives us the passion to work through that, you know.
But it happens again anyway.
It happens again anyway, yes. Oh man, it's so funny.
That's the frustrating part.
You know, players like, oh, you've just got to be a robot. Look at Cyril, look at innovation, you know, and I've been watching a lot of tennis lately, and I do like any 1v1 sport. I like to draw comparisons because very psychological 1v1 sport. Look at Roger Federer. They're like, yeah, he's so calm. He's ice, you know, he's like ice. He doesn't get angry. I'm like, Cyril's fucking angry every game he plays, guys. Federer, you see the wrinkle on his forehead? He's pissed off because he just hit the ball wrong. These guys are angry. They just have developed such an efficient way of immediately channeling that anger into the productive path. So we barely see it as anger. We don't even recognize it. If you're a regular person who's not this elite athlete, you don't even notice that they're angry. Like when Cyril just looks a bit frustrated after a game. I guess people see a little bit of it, like Cyril or Neeb after a game especially, right?
Yeah, when they talk to themselves.
Yeah, they're sitting there talking to themselves. That's them kind of going, okay, like they let out the anger, they feel it a bit, and they're trying to redirect it. It's a never-ending challenge to do that efficiently, to do that effectively. But that's really cool to hear your thoughts and like, you know, you're like, give yourself that second to breathe and then try to just channel it productively. I think it's a never-ending challenge. So recently you said you've had some issues, you know, with kind of getting that learning and moving over the hurdles to the next level. Do you ever feel like you've really fallen into like was this the worst point in your career when you were younger? Do you remember it being easier or just as difficult when you were new to competitive tournaments and that sort of stuff?
I believe, well, when I had more success, I suppose in like 2010 to 2012, I would say it would be easier because the game was newer. I was also a little bit younger and I didn't have as many things on my mind as I do have right now, like just real life stuff, which does get into your head a lot of the times. And you have simply less time to think about StarCraft and just practice StarCraft. This is one of the issues. Like people say, I remember like In Control used to say that in the past on the Pylon show, like people don't get slower when they're like 25 or 30. They just get more stuff on their mind, and that's what's slowing them down. And
100%.
yeah, I felt that on my own skin, and I know exactly what he was talking about, and I completely agree about that. So I suppose it was easier back then. Right now, the game is well more figured out as well, but I do improve as well all the time. It's not like I'm getting worse. It's just people practicing, they get better as well. So like the skill level just is increasing every day, and it's such a difficult game that also some kind of like playstyles or map pools sometimes do not simply fit me. So that's why you can see me like get knocked out early in the tournaments from time to time, or sometimes I will get a deep run because well this kind of playstyle actually fits me, and then it looks great. Wow, MaNa somehow is really good, but I've always been there and I always will be there. And just sometimes the playstyles do not really fit me that much.
Yeah, and you've got to be able to roll with those punches and accept that, hey, maybe I did still play a pretty good game. Sometimes we play very good StarCraft and we still get eliminated, and we need to be able to separate, the judgments of our own abilities from individual performances, which is very difficult. Especially when we're still so passionate about the game after competing for such a long time, as you clearly are. And, I'm so happy that you are still around. I think one of the scariest things for any competitor is when they do start to phone it in. If they start to feel nothing after a loss, if they start to feel not nervous before a big match, and they're just, Like, I think there should always be at least a little bit of nerves. Just, even if it's just excitement, it doesn't, I'm not saying your hands are shaking and you're fucking up your strategies, but there should be a bit of that. When you're in a big match and you've felt this, you've been in enough grand finals and enough big tournament matches on stage, there should be a moment where your senses heighten, right? You feel, your mind's kind of going a bit crazy. It's whirring. The match is about to start. And we should feel that. Remind me if I'm wrong. Just off the top of my head, I do remember you having a bit of a downswing in your performance in, I believe, 2017, if I think correctly. And I believe I remember you saying something about playing quite a bit of Heroes of the Storm. Am I remembering correctly? Was there a moment there where maybe you weren't as in tune with StarCraft? You were, not
Yes.
quite as zoned into the game? And, how did that affect you? Do you think it was a good thing to almost take like a step back from being as involved so you could come back fresh? Or do you think it was like a bit of a mistake? What went down there?
I believe it was 2017. I was playing Heroes of the Storm and StarCraft at the same time, but it was the moment where like I really genuinely hated PvZ and I did not enjoy it. I didn't want to play. I knew I could improve something, but I simply did not enjoy it because the games like for me at that time was I was playing pretty good, but I was still losing against people that I would consider myself much better. And it was a tough moment for me because I actually wanted to switch to Heroes of the Storm. The game was, well, not very much alive, but like I enjoyed it because it was for the first time ever I played something else than StarCraft on a high level, and I actually wanted to play on a high level. And even in Heroes of the Storm, I played European Championship in a Polish national team, and we won it all. It was a Nexus Games, I think, 2017, something like that. So the competitive side of Heroes of the Storm was appealing to me.
Yeah.
But then after doing like all the analyzing if it's actually worth it, like financially for me, if I can actually maintain my pro gamer's life how I am right now, if Heroes of the Storm is the game to go. And I had to schedule a meeting with Victor from the owner of Liquid, well, not owner now, but co-owner, is, and that he, like we talked genuinely how it would look like, and he said something like, yeah, like we really appreciate what you have done to StarCraft, but if you would like to switch to Heroes of the Storm, we would just pay for you as an appreciation for the next year, but from then you would need to find another team. And like I don't know what would happen after that. And with StarCraft as it was back then, I was not earning a lot, but I was earning enough to make a good living, and I had a good salary in Liquid. So I decided that, okay, maybe it's just bad right now, and it will be bad for the next couple of months, but things will be better. Like it's terrible right now, but like I have played StarCraft for almost 15 years at that time. Why finish now? Like why do I stop when it's not going so good? Like if if it's kicking me down, I need to keep on getting up all the time until it does get better. And I cannot be this kind of a weak player that I never wanted to be, that I quit because, well, it's too hard. I just need to work harder. So I decided to just keep going at that time. It was a difficult time for me, and the results were not there, but I like sometimes somehow it just got better. I think there were some balance patches as well.
Yeah.
The map pools got a little bit better, and maybe I think the Blizzard also like announced like WCS for the next 2 years, so I had like more future plan. And like also my girlfriend was very supportive to me. I just needed to have someone to talk to. Like I just needed a good time in my life for like a month or two just to get back to it, I think.
And that's it. It's you've done it for so long, and there's always naturally going to be these moments where things are hard and other opportunities arise, and there is something so exciting about, especially when you start getting good at another game or another thing, because you feel that initial burst of passion. I think we can say in hindsight, it's 2020, you chose the right game. I'm really sorry to all the Heroes fans out there. I love you guys. But, unfortunately, the matter is, don't get me wrong, one day StarCraft 2 will actually die in terms of there being the current professional scene. There will still be people competing at a high level, like, until StarCraft 3 or Warcraft 4 comes out. Don't get me wrong. Probably forever, there'll be people competing. But I guess, yeah, with Heroes, marketing budget is what 99% of its esports was. And there's a very scary thing when something's completely locked back into the microtransactions that are being sold, because if that dries up, suddenly the esports scene just flattens and disappears overnight. And that's one of the most tragic things, right? Because so many people were invested in that scene. But I guess to stay on point, I think this is the challenge a lot of players out there are facing. I'm so glad you've stuck with StarCraft. Your girlfriend Anna, you guys have been together for a long time now as well, right?
I think this year it was 5 years, I believe.
Damn.
I think it's been 5 years. I don't want to get punched in my face if she's I believe it was 5 years.
Yeah.
In 2019. It's going to be 6 years if we stay together, which I hope we will in July.
Well, chat's calling for you to put a ring on it. There's always one person. Is like, put a ring on it. I've been with my girlfriend now for 10 years later this year. So that's all I get from anyone that ever comes up with. They're like, put a ring on it and have a baby. I'm like, shut up, stop telling me what to do. My mom's like, when am I getting more grandkids? I'm like, no, calm down.
It's saying like, when are the grandkids? Like, come on.
You're like, chill out, guys.
I have video game to play.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man. It's pretty hard to keep your APM up when you're bouncing a baby on your lap. I mean, I think some people watching might not actually realize how young you are as well. Especially some of the people, I always get surprised, right? Because everyone's getting old. You were tweeting the other week, you're like, oh, it's weird because I was always the youngster and now I'm one of the older guys in StarCraft. Yes. You're still only 26 years old, despite having a 10-year career in StarCraft 2, being here since the very beginning. Yeah, I mean, 26 is so young. So young.
I mean, is it really that young? I mean, well, if you put it in a perspective like that, like I had a 10-year career and I even played Brood War competitively, then I am still young. But I think no more I am that young in the scene, especially. There are so many younger players. Like you said, I tweeted that I used to be the youngster. Now there are just many younger players than I am. I'm one of the oldest. It's such a weird feeling to know how these kids feel in tournaments, because I used to be one of them, and how badly they want to win and just show themselves. Like Clem Raynor already obviously showed himself. He's the world champion, and Cyril is still like super young. Neve is super young. Then these guys are just so good, so much better. I need to keep up with the youngsters now.
It's the new wave, man. The new wave, the new level. It's the nature of most competition that it just gets harder over time because there's more of a shared knowledge pool to draw from. I look at the scene now and I look at it back in 2010, 11, 12. One of the big advantages the Korean scene had over the foreign scene back then was there was just so much more shared knowledge and information. Once you got to a competitive level, there was so much more of this pro community of players who had so much experience in live tournaments with how to set up there, how to practice, how to grind builds for Pro League and get these sniper builds. But I think that's developed in the international scene as well now. So I think we're in a really kind of special place where I see all the players supporting each other and helping each other out and learning strategies. One of the things I joke about is the Zergs are a bit of a hive mind. They get together and they all help each other out, and they're always like so patting each other on the back and shit. And whilst they occasionally complain about balance, most it's like, well, let's just find a way to solve it, buddy. Like, it's like the weird, I don't know, happy days or some shit. The Zergs are weirdly positive in Europe in the past. Not all of them. Shout out to my boy Risky. I know you're out there somewhere.
Yeah, why do you think they're so positive? All the money belongs to them.
Well, then there's the Terran, who are the obviously, you know, they're the meme crew, just non-stop memes and lots of complaints, but lots of very secretive with their build orders, because a lot of the Terran is, you know, looking for surprise and how they win their games, right? They're very secretive, but lots of memes, very, very funny. Bit of support for each other there, a bit of learning. They have their own like little mini crews between the Terran pros. Protoss players, I usually talk about how they're the serial killers of StarCraft. You know, they're like the weird kind of isolated guys practicing on their own a lot of the time. Not all of them, but it's a joke that I've made in the past. Do you have many practice partners? Is there a Protoss crew these days? Like, what's the Protoss? Is there a Protoss hive mind? Are you guys connecting your dreadlock hair to the Kala and sharing strategies? What's going on, man?
We have a Skype chat with the best Protosses, and sometimes when someone is struggling, like, we ask for advice, like, what did I do wrong in this tactic? I think I am struggling against XYZ. If you could help me out, just let me know. And sometimes we will just watch a replay together. I think the Protosses are very helpful when it comes to like theory crafting, but I think we're also all like depressed because it's not going well for any of us at the moment. Everybody's like looking up to Showtime of how high he's on the ladder, but then in the tournaments itself, it's not going that well for him either. Yeah. So like we are looking for someone to look up to, and we're all just hugging each other right now, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You know, I think back to when I was first learning Protoss was 2016, right? The first proper year of Legacy of the Void. The Mothership Core was definitely something which I think personally made... Protoss was a lot more reliable, stable, I felt, in terms of the builds I could make work and the results. There was a little bit less of this balanced on a knife's edge feeling to the race back then. Don't get me wrong, it was frustrating to play against, as the other races as well. But I remember that being a year where the game was new as well, right? People was figuring stuff out, right? But I remember being able to look at Neeb and Showtime and copy their builds and just be like, cool, I can kind of really follow a solid build order and I don't need to be quite as flexible. Since then, it does feel like there has been Protoss players that have come out and trailblazed. But yeah, not quite as consistent. So, I mean, just I guess design-wise, do you think, you know, Protoss is just a little bit inconsistent? Is it just a little bit hard in the early game? I feel like PvT is pretty good. I think PvZ, I guess, is the sore point in terms of consistency, where even though I think sometimes the win rate's okay, I sometimes see like a really, really good Protoss player lose to a Zerg player who I think shouldn't be able to beat them. And I feel like there's not as much of a contest of the abilities as there should be in those matches. I don't know. I'm kind of waffling here. I have like a lot of feelings about it. But PvZ, I think especially the end of last year made me very upset at that matchup with the map pool that we had. Nidus Swarmhost being where it was, the Nidus being very silly. You know, that I think was an upsetting finish to a year of StarCraft in a matchup. What are your thoughts on Protoss and PvZ specifically?
I think also one of the most upsetting parts of PvZ in the past was when you could have drop overlords at Hatchery Tech with Evolution Chamber, where Scarlet won versus SOS at the IEM Pyeongchang. The grand finals was terrible. Like, I don't want to take away from the championship. Congratulations, Scarlet, but that grand final was terrible. But that was a long time ago. Anyway, about right now, I think the matchups themselves are interesting. I think with the late game changed, with the infestors, with infested Terrans like removed, was a very bold move by Blizzard. I think it was absolutely the move in the right direction. I actually don't. I don't think we see a lot of like real late game PvZ with like
Yeah.
carriers and stuff like that. We basically see a PvZ with either Protoss moving up with 200 supply with +3 and rolling over the Zerg, or Zerg killing the Protoss before that. I don't really see many games like that. I think the biggest problem and overlooked thing is the maps. They have such a big role in the game that they change how the matchups work, how quickly you can get to your opponent's base, and how much you can see with how big the map is. The game has been much more fun since the BlizzCon patch, but the map pool that we currently have, I am very not really disappointed, but I'm not enjoying the map pool, and I don't think the map pool is as good as we had a few map pools. This is one of the worst map pools that we have in quite a few times.
Do you think the bases are just too spread out?
I think the bases are very spread out. The maps are really open. There's a lot of like dead space with flying units, which is like somewhat good for PvZ. Because you can fly out with the oracles, but it's terrible for TvP, and it's also part of the reason why we see so many Terrans winning at the time. Like there was no patch; it's just the maps that have been kind of figured out, and Terrans are doing really, really good against Protoss. I think overall the maps right now, they are not that great. Obviously, maybe I'm just lacking the skill in the game, and obviously I am lacking the skill. I just find it very, very difficult with the current map pool to figure out if it's the matchup problem, if there's like a balance problem, or if it's just a map that is not well designed for this matchup specifically.
It complicates the discussion a lot, doesn't it? It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Zen.
Yeah, like Zen, for example, it is the weird map, but it's so big and it has so much potential to make cool games. Like, yeah, we want to make cool games, but it's such a hell to play on this map. In all of the matchups, in PvP, PvT, or PvZ. I don't know if the other races feel the same, but having like open main all the time and so many avenues to attack in, as well as open expansions, I wouldn't say this is a map that you would want to play on. Like in the past, maybe in the previous map called Disco Bloodbath or something like that would be a map that you would, or Thunderbird would be a map that you feel comfortable in as a Protoss. But I feel in the current map pool, there's not a single map that a Protoss is feeling very comfortable that they want to play on this map. Like I can play all the maps in the current map pool, but there's not a map that I would say gives an edge to the Protoss for some kind of reason. And it does give edges to the other races, I believe. But it's a little bit of whining here, I suppose.
No, not at all. I think this is just all valid discussion. You know, I was talking about the mothership and core and how, like, I remember being 6k MMR on NA as Protoss when I was still very new and bad at the Protoss. And I was talking about the mothership core. It wasn't just the mothership core, because you mentioned maps, and I immediately was like, wait a second. 2016, we had like Proxima Station and stuff in the pool. You remember? I've got that open on the stream right now, just to remind people. You basically just get 3 bases with one choke point, like one narrow choke point to the third. And yeah, there's some drop space, but like, come on, like this is what Protoss likes, right? Lots of tight end bases you can defend easily, and like lots of nice choke points.
Well, something like
Dusk
that.
Towers, yeah. There was a lot of maps like this, right? And so you know, sometimes I also forget about how big the maps, and I talk, oh man, is it all the mothership core versus shield battery? Or is it all the Hydra getting an extra 10 hit points, you know, or an extra 5% attack speed? Is it the hit points on the Baneling, since they always survive Storm, and red hit points on creep and still hit your army, you know? Like, there's so many factors to take into account. But I mean, I love the current maps because I love maps where it just, you know, there's more movement and stuff, but at the same time I'm like, oh, these are so fun. I don't mind playing them as all races. At the same time, you know, from the start I was like, ooh, is this going to be really tough for Protoss when you're playing Nightshade, when you're playing Simulacrum, and there's these wide open spaces between your bases. So definitely something, I think, food for thought, right, is that things like Overlord spots as well over naturals and stuff like that. You know, it's like, hey, you want to go like, you know, a Twilight opening, but, you know, if you don't get a Sentry or a flying unit, that Overlord sees your entire natural and your gases, like, for free, you know. And this is like, should we just get rid of that on all maps? Because, like, does Zerg need that? I don't know. Like, that's something, I think there's a lot of things to be discussed there. I think people need to stop throwing shit at map makers as well. People are way too crazy about that. Fucking map makers. I'm like, you think it's their fault? Some of these maps were designed a year ago in a completely different meta by the time they get into the map pool. So it's the process that needs to be revisited. Personally, I'd be very happy for Blizzard to mix in old maps a bit more. I don't think everything has to be new. I think next season, why not just grab 2 or 3 maps each season? Could be just best of from a year or year and a half ago. Why not throw an Ascension to Ire or a Odyssey or whatever map it is? Just throw these back in the pool if they're well-liked maps. And I'm really hoping that with Apollo on board for not new BlizzCon, Katowice next year, I'm hoping we get to do a dream pool. Like best maps of this 2020 gets played in February, March 2021 for that finals. I don't want it to just be, hey guys, new map pool. By the way, turns out like Night of Swarmhost is insanely powerful on this. Well, let's play the world finals on it, So I have high hopes that we'll get that for the world finals next year.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would like old maps to return. Like obviously the maps were good and that's why they were popular. But to go back to the I'm not sure if I would really like it. If I would if I had a choice, do I want to play on the old maps or not? It's like, do you want the safe choice, or maybe the new ones would be better? I think also to keep in mind, the old maps might have been on created on different patches.
Yeah.
So the games would have been different. Like for example, when we had the Dream Pool back in the day, like the maps were not designed for Liberators, and the Liberators were just wrecking everything. There were just bosses you could not hit them and so on. So
that was like a 7 year. That was a 7 year gap between most of those maps, right? They were like really old maps. Like I'm talking
expansion.
Yeah, I'm talking grab it from the previous year or two, like bring back, like Abyssal Reef actually should be okay on this meta. Let's do that, But only a few maps each season. I still think you want fresh new maps. You want to bring in new things, right? But I just think, also, we should be open to bring back the best ofs. Yeah.
I just want to make sure to clarify that it's not like I think the maps are terrible and I hate the map makers. I think just in my opinion, in my own playstyle, that the current maps they're not suitable for me. I do not enjoy it just for myself. Maybe for other people, the map pool is completely fine and they enjoy playing on it, and that's completely fine by me.
Welcome to 2020, everybody, where pro gamers are super mature and diplomatic. MaNa there, making sure he doesn't get the hive mind after him or get quoted poorly. It's so funny because I just remember 2011. It's like, so Idra, what do you think of them? They're fucking shit. They're so bad. These guys are fucking idiots, And now it's like 2020. You guys are all so intelligent and adult and well reasoned with how you speak. It's just
are we though?
Yes. Not all. We need some more interviews on balance and map design with Soul, I think, with his unfiltered thoughts. I think that would be great. And Risky. Yeah, we should. Wouldn't that just be a great talk show just hosted by like Soul, Risky, and I don't know, who's the biggest Protoss whiner?
Maybe me.
maybe you're not the biggest whiner. Get out of here. That would be amazing, dude. I would definitely subscribe to the Patreon for that talk show. Risky, make it happen, man. Just 3 dudes yelling at each other for the whole time.
They're all trying to prove that they have the worst.
Oh my god. It would be great, dude. Well, we've stolen a lot of your time, so let's start to round up here. A couple of questions from chat and so on. Thoughts on bringing back 4-player maps? I think as a Protoss and Legacy of the Void, I know the answer to that.
Nope.
Hells no.
No. We don't want. I think it was one of the best changes to have only 1v1 maps. I believe it was WCS Austin, where I won against Snoot in the 3rd map just because I scouted him first and he scouted me last. That gave me a big edge over him. So I just don't want to have unfair wins or losses.
I like 4-player maps for variety. It would be cool, I think, personally, if we had one in each season, maybe. And just for the latter players, people like randomness. People like things to have a bit more variability, a bit more gamble in there.
People like cheap wins,
People like cheap wins, dude. Yeah, there's a lot of people who play Hearthstone and any other game where there's some crazy chance, right? It's like, there's something that gets tickled in your brain. I think it would be fun for players, but it should always be vetoable, right? And it would be vetoable. I also think 9-player map pools, because I am very, very sick of seeing... nine map pools. I'm very sick of seeing the shit map that's never been played in the grand final. That is just one of the silliest things, that a map gets vetoed all season. No one prepares for the best of 7.
Additional maps then, right? Because the season has always had 7 maps. So
throw Abyssal Reef in there, man. Bring back in all the
maps.
It all fits together, man. All right, so last couple of questions here. I think we've had an awesome conversation. I've been just enjoying hearing about your struggles and obviously your history as a player and dealing with losses and stuff. Back in the earliest memories of playing and meeting in StarCraft 2, what were the current StarCraft 2 pros? Who do you have the earliest memories of playing and meeting? Was it maybe someone you met back in Brood War and then they continued and became a StarCraft 2 pro gamer? Was Nurtio didn't play Brood War, did he? Is that like an old rival from Brood War?
No, I think he played a little bit of Brood, but he was not even good. I guess TLO, I played him in the very first DreamHack that I took second place in 2010. I played against him in the group stage. He was a StarCraft Brood War player as well, but I didn't meet him in Brood War. Like to have a player that I know in Brood War and in StarCraft 2, it's actually hard to find. Maybe Morrow as well. Like we're very good friends in StarCraft Brood War, and then we were both in Mouse Wars for a long time. And so yeah, Morrow comes to mind as well.
The maker of the most balanced and fair micro arcade map of all time. Hells yeah. The micro tournament where half the time it's a dice roll whether you win or lose, depending on what units you spawn with. It was probably better than most of the ones made by other people, though. What was it like playing against Alpha Star?
Very interesting, to say the least. It was different than playing ladder tournaments or anything that I have faced. And you could not feel... what's the approach of the agent. Like you had no idea, because if you play against a person, you know, if they're all inning you, that means they want to end the game quickly and there's not like a fallback plan. Or if they play a macro, well, then the game will go a little bit longer. With Alpha Star, it could attack you at any point and the game could go for the next 20 minutes. You have no idea. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like a different mode. I liken it to, you know, like the first time you're playing against like a map hacker or something like that. And you kind of need to, all your natural reactions kind of change a little bit. And you're like, oh, I got to do things just a little bit differently. Oh, okay, I got to like change this up and this. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of crazy when you change that up and you've got to just shift the focus and the way things play out. I think it's pretty cool we got Alpha Star. I kind of wish we got to the point where it had any understanding of how to actively scout, you know, and react to things a little bit better. But it did figure out some shit to an exceptionally high level. Its tactical knowledge got very good as well, so it's cool to see.
Like when I was playing against it, it also just showed me what I am looking for in StarCraft when I'm playing against people, and how different it is when I'm playing against a bot and against an agent. So it just I guess it did make me a little bit of a better StarCraft 2 player, because I need to figure it out. Like how to get better overall, not only just against people, but just against myself, basically. When I know I'm making mistakes, and the knowledge that I have gathered how to use it and just how to use it, basically.
Yep. Okay, we got a question here from LPYG. What would be the core advice for someone who's giving his best to go pro status in StarCraft 2 now in 2020?
The best thing that I also use is just do not get discouraged by the losses. If you want to go pro, just keep grinding. Try to show yourself in every tournament that there is. Small tournaments, I don't know, Pizza Weekly or whatever the tournaments there are. Try to play in them. If you lose in the first round, who cares? If you get to the round 3, maybe someone will look at you. Someone maybe will stream your game. Just keep playing and don't be toxic. That's it.
Yeah, I remember the old days of signing up for every tournament and getting wrecked by people who actually understood fundamentals of RTS games, which I didn't, and always asking them for advice and getting directed to things. Like, actually, yeah, I mentioned that Sheth article on worker saturation earlier. I remember playing him in a tournament, and I was asking for advice on how to improve, and he was like, well, you know, I could tell you're pretty bad at the fundamentals, is essentially what he said in a very nice diplomatic way. And he actually, you know, he linked up that worker article to me after a tournament game, an in-game chat. He was like, hey, read this article and you should, you know, read through the forums more and stuff. And, you know, it was talking to other pro players. I always was seeking advice from players better than myself. I think a modern player who's gotten very good recently, who's done the same thing as Future, the North American Terran player, who for years has just been like doggedly harassing everyone he plays in a tournament, talking to casters, and just being like asking for feedback, asking for information, networking, getting involved in clans, and talking to people. So it's kind of cool to see that there's still so much passion coming up in the scene.
And he's very good, so you can see it works.
Hells yeah. All right, final question. I want to let you go because we've gone for a very long show today. If you have trouble in a matchup, isn't it better to just all in, reduce the variability, and that way you can just focus on the micro and hiding your moves and try to trick your opponent, says Dude215.
Well, it depends what you struggle in, right? If you struggle in all ins, isn't it better to all in? Like, doesn't really make sense. Well, it depends what you want to achieve. If you want to have cheap wins and not to get better as a player and like invest into your future, and sure, you can all in and make sure that the shorter games have like your favorite in them. But if you want to improve as a player and not only in that particular matchup, just try to like be like Serral, basically. You really need to figure the game out. Do not all in all the time, because it doesn't, like, all in is a part of the game. Make sure you know some all ins or like very aggressive strategies, but make sure that you are not only that.
Yeah. There's so much to learn in StarCraft, and I think there's something to be said for studying players like Haas and crazy people and learning to mix gambles into your play and understand those gambles. But I think if you're someone's favored against you in a tournament, right, you are prone to gamble a little bit more, right? But it doesn't have to be an all-in attack. It could be cutting a corner greedily, right? It's no matter what that gamble is, you know, that could fall into the macro spectrum. You push an edge a little bit more, you know, you're taking a calculated risk that you think has a pretty high percentage of paying off and not getting punished, right? And that could be building an extra base that is a minute earlier than normal, or it could be, you know, pretending you're probing up and taking the gases on your natural and not actually mining from them and shading 30 adepts into their base in PvP and hopefully getting in there before they have a few Archons and shield batteries up, right? That's actually just standard PvP, let's be real. If you make it to 2 bases, which is a long shot in the current meta of
not
PvP.
In Korean PvP, that's not happening.
Exactly. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on, MaNa. I'm going to cut it off there so we don't waste too much of your time. Thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate you coming on. Any shout outs before we let you go?
Shout out to my Team Liquid. It's been a pleasure. It was a very good conversation. Enjoyed my time in here. Hope you guys enjoyed it too. Wish you best of luck, Pig. And I guess see you in Katowice, I suppose, right?
Hells yeah, definitely. I'll be there. Yeah. Hope to get you back on the show in the future at some point, maybe a few months down the track. But yeah, look forward to it. It's always a pleasure chatting to you. And let's win some games in front of that Polish crowd. I want to see you up on that stage again. It's going to be such a sick tournament, man.
Yeah, it's really the highlight of the beginning of the year every year for me. I'm so glad that we have Katowice to look forward to every year, and it's like I really wish I could go further in the rounds just to make sure that I play in front of the crowd again. It's an amazing feeling.
You make it to the final round of the open bracket, you've basically like done the same as winning 3 online cups. It's actually insane how hard Katowice is.
Yes, it's crazy.
Good luck, man. Awesome. Well, good luck in your practice. Have a good night, and yeah, kick some butt. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye. Cheers.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to the Patreon and all of the rest. Link is below in the description. We're going to have who on next? Who should we get on the show? Perhaps Scarlet. Maybe? We'll see. I'm talking to a few pro gamers. We'll see who we can schedule in for next week. Hope you guys are enjoying the shows. If you have any feedback or anything, feel free to post it in the comments section. I think I still have a lot of room to improve with these sort of free-ranging conversation shows. Something that's very new to me, so I appreciate you all being patient and having patience with the ums, the ahs, the interrupting, and all the rest of it. But I think so far I've been having a lot of fun and kind of figuring out where we want this show to go. I'm torn between us talking more strategy in some of the shows, between sometimes just talking for an entire hour about what you eat for breakfast and how you stretch your wrists like we did with TLO, because I thought that was a great discussion. So going to try and just keep it free flowing and kind of follow the conversations where they happen to go. Not trying to force it at this point, but we're going to organically figure out what the show is and where it goes. For now, we're just sticking to that core direction of I want to get to know the pros better and understand who they are as people, both inside and outside of the game. And if you guys, I want to share that with you guys, but this is something that I think is just gonna allow me to understand who these players are, and hopefully that's gonna filter through in the commentary as well of the big tournaments. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all the rest. Have a good night. I love you all. GG's.